Hey folks, Dave Temple here. As you know, my podcast is all about talking to some of the best thriller writers in the world. But now, after nearly 2.5 years, I think it's time I toot my own horn. So with that, I'm offering my thriller, The Poser, for sale. This thriller stars Hollywood detective Patricia Pat Norelli, a rookie cop working the overnight beat when one of Hollywood's biggest stars is found dead in her Hollywood Hills home. The only problem, the star just won an Oscar and is found dead only hours later. Now, Pat sees this as a way to forge her own path and muscles her way into the case. Soon, she and partner Detective Stuart Brown find themselves deep inside a complex case with more questions than answers and a ghost of a killer. Now, this isn't my first self-published book, but it's the first one I'm very confident you're going to like. I'm pretty proud of it. And for the rest of this month, you can get the ebook for only $5.95 or the paperback for $13.95. Now, since I do this weekly podcast as a free service, perhaps you'd consider this a way to help out your fellow thriller author. Okay, here's the link, davidtemplebooks.com/books. Okay, there you'll see The Poser. Just click and you're on your way. Again, the link is davidtemplebooks.com/books. Otherwise, just head over to Amazon. Okay, thanks for your support. And now on with the show. It's time to get into the Thriller Zone. Hello and welcome to the Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and today's show we have C. Matthew Smith with a book called 20 Mile. Matt and I have been crossing paths for quite some time, and I am very excited to say this debut author is going to be sharing his inside secrets and talking about life in the South. So why don't you and I get comfortable, kick back, and meet Matt Smith right here on the Thriller Zone. Monsieur Handsomeness.
How are you?
I'm so good. How about yourself?
I'm great, man. Is this background okay?
I think that's very in the holiday spirit.
That's what I'm shooting for, you know. Got a little holiday flannel on. Got a little garland behind me.
You know, the only thing missing, do I have, maybe I can do this in the post. I'll put a Christmas, a Santa hat on you like I did in some of my marketing. That. Let's just go with the pure sexiness that is you.
Don't oversell it now.
All right. Well, we have so much to do today. Hey, by the way, can I make this comment? You did not ask me for this. I'm probably going to be Mr. Rude Ass for saying this.
Oh, not at all.
Dude, you're so handsome.
Oh,
And then I look at this photograph on the website and I can never figure out, I'm like, what is he looking for? What is he searching for? Why?
Yeah. The middle distance, man. That was taken in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah.
And it really was sort of spur of the moment photograph that was taken. And the really low rent story is I had just gone under contract for that book, and the publisher said, "Hey, we need a headshot." And I was like, I'm on spring break with my kid. We're out in Colorado. I'm not going to be able to get a proper headshot. So we were out there, and my kid, he's a pretty good photographer with a phone. And so I was like, just take a few. And he took a few, and I was like, well, I sent that one to them. I said, will that do? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. So that's how that happened, is that it was that. I'm well aware I'm going to have to take some new photos coming up, but it's worked so far.
Contemplative author.
That's right.
Searching for the muse.
There was truth out there, and I was staring at it.
Yeah. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Smith right here on the Thriller Zone.
Hey, thank you so much, David, for having me. This is awesome.
This book right here has been on my radar. God, dude, it's been like a year. And I got to start out of the gate. Don't usually like to do this, but my apologies, because we've been talking about this forever. Sure. The good news is better late than never.
Hey, I appreciate it, man.
And you're among the last, 3 shows of 2022. I realized this came out last year, so I'm breaking a couple of my own rules. I've backed off of debut authors just a little bit, only because there's so many monster hitters that want to be on the show. And number two is, usually I talk about books that are inside the year that we're talking about, but I'm like, okay, well, this has been sitting on my shelf, and folks, it's a damn fine read.
Oh, thank you.
Which we're going to get to in a minute. But first, we're going to drill down now. Some of the, I always like to start the show with the green room. Now, some of the green room that we were just talking about, I'm sad to say you did not, my friends, get to hear, but that's okay.
It was good stuff.
It was good stuff. Thank you, Matt, for bearing with that as I bare my soul. But one of these days I'll do an uncut version and somebody will get to hear it. But let's start here. I feel like I've known you for years because we've been pals on Twitter sphere.
Right.
Which, by the way, is it me, dude, or is Twitter gotten a little wonky lately?
Yeah, it's a little buggy, a little body. I think it has. Yeah.
I have had more people fall off of following me, like a couple of the heavy hitters that were on the show earlier in the year. All of a sudden, they're nowhere to they're not following anymore. And I'm like, I want to send them emails like a broken lover. Dear so-and-so, why did you unfriend me on Twitter?
Are you sure they didn't just drop off? Because a lot of people have been dropping off.
That could be. I did notice there's a couple of biggies. I won't drop their names, but their followship has dropped dramatically. And I'm like, what? It must be part of the algorithm or something.
Well, I a lot of people are sort of left in the wake of the takeover and, what they anticipate Twitter to become.
Right.
So I think I'm aware of certain writers that I know and that I got to know on Twitter who are no longer there. They've moved to other platforms.
Well, either way, we are here to talk about you and all that is goodness. Now, I do want to ask you this: has the social media universe worked for you as an author? Do you find, this is a question I've been asking a couple of my friends recently, do you find yourself saying that social media does help you, doesn't help you, sells books, gets you attention, etc.?
100%. I think it does. For me, it's made a ton of connections. I've gotten to know a number of people who have either, been kind enough to have me on their show or post a review. I've made a lot of connections with writers who, and one nice thing about writers is 99% of them boost each other's work.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been tremendous. I would not have sold as many copies of 20 Mile as I have without social media. I would not have made the connections in the community I have, at least not as quickly, without social media.
Okay, that's fair enough. By the way, quick note, did you notice the background of the screen around us? Does it feel a little familiar?
It does. It does. I was wondering what was going on. Was it? Yeah. So is that from the cover?
Yeah, it's just a little attention to detail, Matt, that you get here on the Thriller Zone.
Listen, this is why everyone wants to be on your show, man.
So listen to this. Check out these similar 6 degrees of separation or less.
Okay.
You went to Davidson.
Yes.
One of my oldest best friends in the whole world to this day went to Davidson.
Okay.
My sister lived 2 blocks from Davidson for 20 years until she moved recently up to close to Asheville.
Okay.
Speaking of Asheville, where some of your book takes place, where my brother currently lives, Hendersonville, exactly.
Right.
But,
right.
I shot I turned my first book into a film called Chasing Grace, shot it in Waynesville, Asheville, so forth.
Yeah.
Your book takes place Great Smoky Mountains. I spent my childhood playing in and around Great Smoky Mountains, almost my entire childhood. And now you live just outside Atlanta.
That's right.
Where I spent several years working on television and making movies.
So I think this just means that we were meant to hook up. for
Yes.
this interview here. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And spending time in Western Carolina as a kid must have been amazing. I didn't discover it until college because I'm a Central Floridian by birth, and when I got there, I was like, "Where has this been all my life? This is amazing." So growing up in it must have been crazy.
It was beautiful. I grew up my younger years in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Okay.
And so Blue Ridge Mountains right there in my backyard, then moved to Carolina. So I was actually born in Winston-Salem, which is not terribly far from y'all. And then Great Smoky Mountains. Dad's a preacher. I'm a PK. So he spent summers at a little place called Lake Junaluska.
I don't know that I've ever been to Lake Junaluska, but I'm familiar with the signs. You know, you pass by the signs like this is where you would get off to go there. I've not been there, I don't think.
Not to make it about me, it's all about you, but it is very, as I was sitting here studying this, I'm like, babe, talking to my wife, Tammy, look at all the similarities and familiarities. It was just really darn cool.
That is cool.
And then if you ever want to see the actual Lake Junaluska, you can see it in my movie, Chasing Grace. Trying to do a little plug here.
Okay.
It's free. All right, but here's what I want to do. Yeah, I feel like we're distant brothers of twin mothers, or however that the saying goes.
I like it.
This book, 20 Mile, it was like revisiting my childhood. When you start describing areas inside the Great Smoky Mountains and all that area, I go, wow, he really captured the feeling. You could almost smell the woods and hear the creek babbling. And so I had a really fun time reading it. So I got two things for you. Sure. Number one, damn fine writing. Oh my God. Just classic. I want to pull up, a big fancy name and drop it that would impress everybody, but I can't think of one right now. But it is almost literary fiction because of its expertise of the craftsmanship of your storytelling.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to stop at the accolades and get you to talk about it. But here's number two. Where in the wide world of Southern craftsmanship is your next book, and why has it taken so long for it to get here?
Well, so the next one is it's done. The manuscript is done. It is set really in and around Atlanta.
Okay.
So it's an urban setting this time. As for when, I don't know. I hope to be on submission with it the first part of next year. And I think that's on track to happen. But, everything in publishing is slow.
So
it'll be a while.
Could be a while. Okay.
Unfortunately.
All right. So for those who have not read 20 Mile yet, I keep holding it up like I can't put a graphic up on the screen, which I'll do later. But tell us about this story so that we can get a good idea what it's about.
So 20 Mile is, it revolves around a suspicious death inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park. A wildlife biologist is found dead behind a small ranger station on the southwest corner of the park. Outwardly looks a bit like a suicide, but because it involves park personnel and it's kind of sensitive, the park reaches out to what is known as the Investigative Services Branch. Now, a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know this until I started researching this novel. The National Park Service has its own mini FBI, if you will, called the Investigative Services Branch. It's about 36 special agents, and they investigate the most serious crimes committed within the National Park Service. And so Chula Walker, who is our protagonist, she's a special agent with the National Park Service, and she is called in to look at what looks to be a suicide of a park employee. But she's not convinced, and she starts digging. And eventually, her investigation is going to take her much deeper into the park than she expected to go. And it's going to bring her face to face with some men that essentially are out there to reclaim what one of them, sort of their leader, Harlan Miles, believes is a lost family homestead. And so the novel sort of has two different narrative threads that weave together. There's Harlan leading his two sons and an adult friend out into the park, deep into the park, to try to reclaim this homestead, sort of without anybody noticing. And then Chula investigating this death, and they're going to come together in ways that I hope are surprising, but also that spin characters off in different directions when they do come face to face.
Two things. I wish what I should have done earlier. I do this thing called If This Scene Could Talk, right?
Yeah.
Which I may have to do in post-production and add to the show, because there are some moments that I really, really loved. But if I had been thinking ahead and we had a little more time, you and I would have done it together. Which would have been pretty tasty. But I am going to read the very first paragraph of the book. And this paragraph is what kind of got me hooked.
Okay.
All right, Matt, let's take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to do something. It's not quite If This Scene Could Talk, but it's an excerpt that really got my attention. Folks, stay with us. Matt Smith and I are coming back shortly, right here on The Thriller Zone. David Temple here with a question. Do you love audiobooks? Yeah, me too. Do you love giveaways? Avanti Centrae, author of the international best-selling Van Ops thriller series, has just released an award-winning standalone, Cleopatra's Vendetta. Critics are raving, calling it dangerous, intoxicating, rare, and action-packed. To celebrate, my friend Avanti is giving away an audiobook version of Cleopatra's Vendetta and the latest audiobooks from James Rollins and Steve Barry. Just use the code THRILLERZONE for bonus entry points. If you'd like to enter, head over to vanops.net. That's VANOPS.net. Enter today, and good luck. Your host, David Temple here. Hey, before we get back to the show, I thought I would throw in this one quick note. I have had authors approach me who want to actually advertise on the show. And I'm like, that's cool. I love that idea. I mean, think about it. We feature the best thriller writers in the world. You're one of the new up-and-coming thriller writers in the world to be, and you have a book coming out. Our rates are super reasonable. We're easy to work with, as you know, and we all want to work together to make success for all of us. Just reach out to us here at The Thriller Zone at thethrillerzone@gmail.com. Let's talk rates. Let's talk details. Let's do something together in the new year. I think you'll like it. Now, back to the show.
The best thrillers, The Thriller Zone.
And now, back to the show.
The same moment the hiker comes upon them, rounding the bend in the trail, Harlan knows the man will die. He takes no pleasure in the thought. So far as Harlan is aware, he's never met the man and has no quarrel with him. This stranger is simply an unexpected contingency, a loose thread that, once noticed, requires snipping. I knew when I read that, I'm like, oh, baby, I'm in for a ride.
Great. Well, there's a truism in writing fiction that you spend a disproportionate amount of time on that first page, that first paragraph. And the number of drafts I went through with that opening paragraph, that opening chapter, would probably total in the hundreds. So I'm glad that it landed.
Let's drill down on that for a second, because you're the kind of guy I feel like I can really unpack this a little bit. And this is for the writers in the group who listen to the show, who really enjoy these kinds of things. So I'm going to feel perfectly comfortable doing this. But isn't that funny? I've talked to some people along the way, or here in the past year and a half, and you're going to be episode 111, in that some authors, that first opening line, it so grabs them that they go, I couldn't imagine it being any other way, so they never change it. And then folks like yourself who go, I think I have it, but I'm going to tweak it. And literally, you mean that paragraph underwent 100 different incarnations? Probably
so. And the first line that's there now was not the first line in the beginning. Much of that paragraph, much of that first chapter, I sort of reworked the structure of. But yeah, I mean, you want very badly, you have certain goals with that first line. You want very badly to grab attention. You want very badly to set tone. And so, you go at it and you go at it until finally you're like, all right, that's probably the one. I can't confirm 100. What I will tell you is I write on Google Docs. And so I'm constantly revising, tweaking words and all that. If you went back through the history of that particular paragraph and chapter, though, I think you would see constant tweaking.
And so forgive my ignorance on Google Docs. Is that like a lot of different programs that will save a version so that if you get into the next version, you go, no, I really like the 1.3 back. You can just go back to it.
Yeah, there are tools on there that will help you find your old versions of it.
All right, I love that.
I rarely look back, because when I do change it, I'm like, all right, there's a reason for it, but you can definitely do that.
Interesting note too. This clocks in at 320 pages and a couple of drips, and to me, it's about the perfect length of a book. I read Philip Fracasse's "A Child Among Alone with Strangers," right. Which is about 600, and you have to really set aside the time to dive into that. But my question to you is: do you find that there's a natural ebb and flow, natural ending spot around that 310, 320, 350?
I think that's probably true. Word count wise, I think the novel ended up about 77,000 words. And so I think, the manuscript I have now is probably about 10,000 words more than that, but that's, on page, what is that? That's another 40 pages maybe.
Yeah.
I think that there is a sweet spot between, 275 and 375 where most novels probably should end. And, going over that you can, but you probably have to have a reason for doing it. That's sort of my thought. And that partly comes from me as a reader. I don't have that much time to read.
Right.
And so I like to have, I like to get through a novel and at some point, it may take me a month to read one if it's 500 pages. And so, I think naturally I gravitate toward 275 to 375, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And speaking from experience, if I'm reading 1 to 2 books a week, I have to really, I have to go, okay, if I pull down a 600 and a 350, I've got my work cut out for me.
Right.
And so you've just set me up for a perfect question. Do you feel that, and I feel like almost like an old man saying this, but do you feel like in the advent of shortening attention spans and more requirement for our attention that people are gravitating toward perhaps shorter stories?
I think that that's probably true. But, you still see novels coming out that are doing well at 500-600 pages. I think what it does mean, though, is you're writing, we talked about that first page, that first paragraph.
Yeah.
That's, for most people, that's all important because of that short attention span, right? I mean, you got to grab them in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think you'll see things like punchier writing, shorter paragraphs, things like that really sort of cater to that shortened attention span, and probably shorter novels are part of that. If that were completely true, I think we would see a resurgence of novellas as a form, and publishers would be more willing to put them out. And I don't know a lot of publishers that are putting them out regularly, other than, Shotgun Honey and a few others. But I think there's something to it. I think it certainly changes how we write, and how we approach our relationship with the reader.
And speaking of Shotgun Honey, you have written for Shotgun Honey, correct?
Yeah, I will occasionally do like an article on Shotgun Honey's website. I did one, in fact, on outdoor thrillers that I considered, important to me as I was writing 20 Mile. And So Ron Earl at Shotgun Honey was very kind to let me, put that up there. And I will, because of my relationship with some of the writers, I will also do reviews occasionally of their works. It's a good press, man. They do good work.
Yeah. And you're with, do I pronounce this correctly? Lata?
It's Lata.
Lata?
Latah Books was the publisher for this first one.
Okay. Let's take one step backward because, and a lot of times I would do this at the beginning, but I really kind of want to get inside your head. And are you still a practicing attorney?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So having now met a couple of different, David Ellis, Wanda Morris, both attorneys, very prominent, very busy. So when I speak to them, I think about John Grisham and so forth, but I think that workload that you have on a daily basis has to be kind of on the crazy side.
It's pretty busy. Yeah. It's hard to find the time. And that's part of the reason, it's, it's might be 4 or 5 years between books for me. Because I set a goal for when I can write is at night and on weekends. And I'm married. I've got a 16-year-old son who's in high school. I have other things that I want to attend to, and I can only neglect them so much. So I set a goal of 250 words to 300 words a day to write on average. Some days it's more, some days I don't get to write at all. But that's about all I can manage really on a day-to-day basis because of work and everything else.
And here's my curiosity question, just because I'm a writer myself. Do you find yourself, is it early in the morning when the world is still quiet, or do you squeeze it in at the end when everyone else has gone to bed?
No, I am not a morning person, man. I try, but I'm just not. And so I will write, mostly it's at night before I go to bed. Yeah. And on the weekends, I'll get up in the morning and I'll do it until, noon or 1 p.m. or something like that. And then I have the rest of the day with family.
Yeah. I'm one of those guys, and I think it's from doing morning radio shows my whole career, but my brain at about 4:15, I start waking up, and by 5 o'clock, I'm ready to just smack it,
Listen, I'm envious. I see people when they post 5 a.m. Writers Club. I did, 500 words. I did 1,000 words today. I'm like, they would be the worst words in the world if I were writing them at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's just chemical. It's just the way your brain works. And
some people just manage it, and that's great.
Yeah.
I wish I could.
Yeah. Your magic is your magic. You probably, and we're going to get to, I'm going to squeeze in a little rapid fire questions here on you in just a second, but a lot of people find their inspiration, that motivation in the strangest places. And a lot of times it's in, you get a little time off and you get a little extra quiet in the woods, or maybe it's a noisy city, and it just kind of feeds the machine, right?
Right. You got to figure out what works for you. For me, it's complete quiet. I'm just one of those. I can't do it with music. I can't do it with anything else going on around me. And I've just learned that. I've tried everything. This is what works. You winnow it down to what works for you.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of writing 20 Mile?
Favorite part?
Like, what do you walk away saying to yourself? I'm buying yourself some time, by the way.
Right,
what do you walk away going, man, what I learned about Smoky Mountains, what I learned about myself, what I learned about police procedurals, what I learned about psychology, or just the pure joy of writing?
Yeah. So a lot of the research was pretty fun. I chose the setting that I chose because I was familiar with Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Western Carolina. I've spent a lot of time there since I went to college in North Carolina at 18, and it's an area I love. So getting to go back and, do some of the research was a lot of fun. Getting to know leadership of the investigative services branch was pretty cool. I had what they call the special agent in charge, who's sort of number 2 in the ISB, was very generous with his time with me. letting me pick his brain and sort of learning what this little known agency does. And, he was pretty enthusiastic about what they do, actually getting featured in a novel. And so that was a lot of fun. Really, though, I think when the book was acquired and we did developmental editing for the book, that was a challenge, because you've been writing this thing for 3-4 years, and then they're like, "This is great. Now let's change some stuff."
Yeah,
and that's a hard thing to wrap one's brain around. But I will tell you that some of the sections that came out of that are some of the work that I'm the most proud of in the novel. And so, what I really enjoy is watching the damn thing come together in a way that by the end, you're like, "Oh, I'm actually pretty proud of this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you should be.
Well, thank you.
I do have a burning question that has been going through my mind since I've been sitting here. I see a reflection in the glass behind you, and I can't decide if that's some very fancy Hollywood lighting that you've got going on, or you're actually in a church somewhere and that's a stained glass, or what is it? So are you on a laptop or a desktop?
I'm on a laptop.
You could spin it and show me what that. Yeah.
Let's see if I can make that happen. So it looks like the light of God right there, but what it is that's an old stained glass window in our house. I'm in the dining room right now.
Okay.
We live in a small town south of Atlanta called Noonan, Georgia.
Yeah.
It was actually sort of known as a hospital city during the Civil War. And so there's a lot of old housing stock in the city. It was sort of spared the worst of the Civil War. And a lot of housing grew up after that too. Our house was built in 1894. Wow. And that's just a stained glass window from the house that I did not know when I set up here was going to be sort of in the reflection, but there it is.
That's right. I'm one of those guys when I'm sitting here watching movies or TV shows, and my wife, she used to probably be impressed with it back in the day, and now she's probably a little bit annoyed with it. But when I see a mic boom or a light shadow or a key light that's flaring or something, I'll call it out, and she's like, "Don't have to ruin it for those of us who don't know what that's doing."
Don't spoil the magic.
All right, listen, we're going to get to rapid fire questions in just a second, but I do have to wrap with the question that I ask pretty much all my listeners, and you know this. What is your best piece of writing advice to aspiring writers?
How much time do you have? All right, the best one piece is...
And actually, you know what I want you to do? I want you to take a second and really come up with something friggin' juicy, because I don't want the tired and true standard one. And I know, Matt, I know you got it in you. I want to know, I want you to dig deep into the soul of who you are.
Okay.
And tell me, what you've learned over this vast experience of yours.
All right. Number one with a bullet piece of advice for writers is find yourself a group of other writers who will look at your work and be honest with you. I am very, very lucky that through the Atlanta Writers Club, I have a critique group there are 4 of us, and they went through every single section of 20 Mile, and they were brutally honest with me. And you're too close to it as a writer. You've spent too much time with it, and presumably by the time you are ready to send it out in the world, you think it's the best it could be. It is not. And that's what other writers are there for. So find yourself a community of writers, whether it's a critique group, beta readers, just friends who will take the time, but have people who will look at your work and be honest with you about it, what works, what doesn't, and take that to heart. Okay.
Excellent. Superb. Nicely done. All right. You know what this means.
Yep. Rapid fire.
I'm going to let them rip. I'm going to start off with truly rapid. Now, folks, if you're listening at home, you already know that Matt has already given us a couple of the answers to this, but you're going to play along anyway. So, truly rapid. Tea or coffee while writing?
Coffee.
Fried chicken or ham biscuits?
Oh, fried chicken every time.
There you. Collard greens or green beans?
Collard greens every time.
And now the one that you already know. We know he doesn't want a noisy coffee shop. He would prefer probably a quiet library.
Yes, 100%. I need quiet.
All right. A little bit harder now. You and the wife are setting out on a vacation. Maybe the son's coming along. You're on a road trip. You're in charge of the road trip mixtape. What music you gonna all be listening to?
Ooh. So if it's a road trip, and my wife is with me, it's probably going to be more like Iron and Wine. I like a good acoustic. I like a good acoustic soundtrack for that purpose. Now, if I've got like my son along with me, then we may be getting into some modern rap and hip hop. But I'll go with Iron and Wine for wife and road trip.
Okay. And lastly, you're out hiking in the Smokies when you suddenly realize you are screwed. Your cell phone just died. You lost your compass in a rushing stream. The sun is setting. And when you reach in your pocket, you find a hole has been the escape route for your pack of power bars, your last food source. What's the first thing you're going to do?
First thing I'm going to do, besides assess what time of day it is and how much daylight I have left, is I'm going to get back to that stream and I'm going to follow that stream. Because that stream eventually is going to cross over or under a road or a trail. So yeah, I'm going to get back to that water and follow it.
Gotcha. And it always heads downhill. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Well, if you're going with it, that's probably true.
And if you're going, it's going down, it's not going up. And if it's going down, there's going to be civilization somewhere nearby.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, that was fun. Folks, if you want to know more about Matt, visit cmattsmithwrites.com. This will be on the screen below, and follow him as I do on Twitter at cmattwright. And of course, the book, once again, is 20 Mile. It's a great read. It's so much fun. And dude, you have been, this has been a pleasure.
Hey, listen, I've had so much fun. Thanks for having me on, David.
Well, I hope this tiny little podcast here in San Diego, California, does something for you.
Oh, I'm sure it will, man. Listen, everybody wants to be on this thing. And I appreciate you for, mixing in the new guys in the smaller presses with, because I know you got your pick, so I really appreciate the fact that you still have me and Mark Westmoreland and, these guys on. That's big for us.
Thank you for saying that. Totally good times, and big old fat happy holidays to you and yours.
You too, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Matt Smith for spending time with us. Always nice connecting with friends from the South. All right, coming up on next week's show, Bradley Summer has a book called Extinction, and this thing is getting rave reviews. I'm so excited about having Bradley on the show. So I want you to please make plans to attend next week as we begin to wrap up 2022. Hard to believe already. 2 quick little pieces of housekeeping. Number 1, thank you so much to my sponsors who've helped make this show possible for you, my listener, this year. They include AuthorBytes.com, who builds first-class websites for the top authors and up-and-coming authors, too, all around the world. Also, Warwicks.com, the oldest family-run bookstore in America. Check them out in La Jolla, California, just down the road, or on Warwicks.com. Lastly, thank you so much for all the nice, kind comments you have brought our way over the past year. You've left us great reviews on Apple Podcasts, mostly 5-star reviews, so thank you. If you'd like to leave one, we always love hearing from you. You can also just drop us an email at thethrillerzone@gmail.com. Always love to connect with our listeners. And a couple of quick things. Before you know it, 2023 is going to be here, right? We have some of the biggest authors in the world coming in 2023. I'm not going to run them down just yet, but I'm going to be telling you about those in the coming days and weeks. So I can just suffice it to say, you ain't seen nothing yet. That and a whole lot more. And anyway, I'm David Temple, your host. I got something ready to do. I'll see you next time when we have another exciting edition of The Thriller Zone.